You've come to the right place. That's right. I know exactly why you're here. You want to make a game mechanic in about 5 steps. Let's dive right into these with step number 1. So first and foremost, you got to establish what you are trying to solve. For example, game of Monopoly, when players are working their way around the board, every time you pass go, you get 200 bucks. What problem do you think they were trying to solve? Probably finding players were a little light in the cash load and they wanted to find a way to fix that. That's an example of a really simple game mechanic, the way you can think about what problems you're having and any number of solutions that come to mind. Now let's move into step number 2. So this is a brainstorming session. No idea is a bad idea. Just jot it down. And keep a good list of these because it's a really good reference point if you need to come back and alter that mechanic in the future. And you never know, maybe some of these ideas will come into play in future games. It's important to document your ideas, but just let them come. Don't judge them as you think of them. Start to think about how it can help you solve your problem. For step number 3, make sure as you're working on these game mechanics, you keep your overall vision in mind. Because it can get really easy to go into a mechanic working session and all of a sudden you're way off base from your overall vision for the game. Now, not to totally say that's a bad thing, because sometimes you may end up in a better place than your original vision was. Just make sure it's a place you actually want to go. Once you've brainstormed up a decent list of ideas, start to really consider how well they would fit into your game and if there would be any negative downstream impacts from adding said mechanic. Don't put too much time into it. As you alter your game, add new mechanics, it's just going to lead to your other mechanics that you've added needing to be altered or possibly swapped out with different ideas. But be flexible. Avoiding getting too attached to your individual ideas can help you build the better game. Now, let's move into step number 5. Step number 5 is be patient. These things take time, especially if you're working with a complex game. Any individual mechanic can be a challenge to figure out and get working right. Now, the problem just compounds for every mechanic you add into your game, because they all have to work well together. So this is a time-consuming process, and honestly, one of the main pieces of game development. So once you get comfortable dealing with this, it starts to get a lot easier to keep moving forward, even if you had to scrap some ideas that you were really excited about. To make this more helpful, let's dive into a live example where I've come up with a good mechanic to solve a specific problem. Let's dive right into it right now. Let's get into this example. So in a previous video I did, I came up with some board game ideas. One of the ideas was a glass blowing board game. Start things off, the question is, what problem are we trying to solve? So for the glass blowing game, the idea that I kind of had was intricacy versus stability, kind of give and take. Where you're trying to make the most intricate piece without it breaking. But we want a mechanic that facilitates that. Some sort of mechanic to help facilitate the gaining of attributes. Okay, that's a good way to put it. Mainly talking about intricacy versus stability. Okay. Alright, so that's the problem we're trying to solve. So we want some sort of mechanic that drives people to make a choice for how intricate and stable their piece is going to be. My first kind of thoughts would be some sort of card drawing, public pool of cards. Yeah, public pool of cards that can be chosen from with different attributes. Okay, there's one idea. So maybe actually we have, oh yeah, here we go. So we have some sort of skill set that allows us to attempt different styles. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we have some sort of skill set that lets people attempt different styles for their pieces that have different attributes attached to them. Based on your skill set, it can pass or fail somehow. Okay, so there's another idea. That one feels there are a couple of gaps there, but something along those lines. The card drawing seems pretty straightforward. The skill set that allows us to attempt different styles definitely feels like there's some gaps there. I think it's workable, but it does add some different elements because then we have to worry about a skill tree. So these are some of the downstream impacts you want to think about, because public pool of cards, that could be done wholly. It could be a very simple sort of setup, whereas the skill set is implicitly stating that we're creating some sort of skill tree. Somehow that needs to be managed. Somehow people need to get points. It adds a lot of potential complexity. Now, that's not to say there isn't some way out of that. It's not out of the realm of possibilities to have a skill tree that's really simple and just works really well. Third option. Okay, so everybody starts with a hand of cards. Size is irrelevant right now. It will get important after the basics of this is figured out. So everyone starts with a set of hand. Oh, here we go. Okay. So we start with a hand that includes some base pieces. This is coming up with a different kind of a way to solve this. So we have like, this is different card types, right? So we have base pieces, which are like the main bulk of the object, which those can have different attributes. So likely the planar kind of more just generic ones would have more stability, and then your intricacy would come from add-ons, whereas if you do a more intricate base piece, you got like a lot higher points potential starting out, but a lot higher risk of it breaking. Okay, so we have base pieces with different levels of intricacy and stability. Okay, I'm liking this idea. So there's some potential here. So you don't necessarily even need to have the base pieces in your hand. So this is a continuation of this idea. So base pieces just be a general option for all players. We could have like 3 or 4, 2 or 3. I don't know why 3 feels good. And see right here, this kind of decision is really based on like how deep of a game you're making, how complex it's going to be. Because my first thought with this is, my vision is for it to be a fairly simple game. You know, we're talking like one main mechanic, maybe a couple of other mechanics, but nothing extreme. So we have our base pieces that anyone can choose from. We all get a hand. All players get a hand of different add-ons. 3 add-ons per piece. So you have a limit. You can only add 3 things to your piece. So your base piece plus your 3 add-ons is the max intricacy you can get. And that's based on whatever add-ons you happen to have in your hand. Yeah, that feels pretty good. And then, so this begs the question in my head. Okay, when do pieces break? What makes them break? maybe another aspect of the hand would be enemy players can play an environment cards that make more intricate pieces fail. Okay, so this is a cool idea. So we have, so this is kind of what I have mapped out right now. So the base pieces are an option for all to choose. Everybody has a hand, and that hand is a combination of add-ons and maybe environment cards or something along those lines. The add-ons are for you to gain points, and then the environment cards make things more difficult for everyone. And so I'm thinking it could be like moisture in the air or something like that, extra heat. Maybe if we do rounds where, someone plays their add-on and then maybe the environment cards can be dropped whenever and it affects everyone's pieces. That's an interesting idea. Yeah. So you can kind of get a really good idea on how this process works, this process of building out a mechanic. So we started with this initial question of what kind of mechanic could we build that would help facilitate gaining of attributes, intricacy, and stability for my glass blowing items. And it's real rough right now for sure. But I hope this gave you guys a real clear idea of the sort of process that I go through. So I just start coming up with ideas, and then eventually you'll hit one where it just things start falling into place, it starts making more sense, and there you go. And then you can really start to form something really cool. Like this sounds like it could be a really fun game. There's obviously a ton left still to figure out here. It's a cool idea. It's a solid mechanic. Well, I hope you guys really enjoyed this. This was a fun process for me to go through. I think it's a really, really fun exercise to just come up with a random game idea and see if you can come up with a cool mechanic that fits into it. But I really hope that you can apply this to a game you're actively working on to help come up with some more solid mechanics and to help get your game finished. If you guys enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and catch my next video. Bon voyage.